My name is Claire. And 3 days before my sister's wedding, my mother asked if I could help with the kitchen. She said it sweetly, like it was a favor, like being invisible was a contribution, no invitation, no dress code, just quiet instructions not to get in the way. I said nothing, but I understood everything. Lydia is my younger sister, the golden one. She doesn't have to ask, she just receives. She was always the one people waited for, the one they saved the best piece of cake for, the one whose tantrums turned into family-wide emergencies. Now she's the bride, the center of everything, and she's marrying the man I once called home. His name is Ethan. I dated him for almost 2 years, until one day I didn't. He said I was too serious, too sharp. He needed someone easier. That someone turned out to be Lydia. They called it coincidence, timing, said I shouldn't take it personally, but it wasn't timing, it was proximity, and I took it exactly the way they hoped I wouldn't. Quietly, like a good daughter. I left, moved states, took a job reviewing contracts for a living, built a small, forgettable life, exactly the kind no one checks in on. I didn't go to Thanksgiving that year, didn't send gifts, didn't explain myself, but somehow I was still on the wedding logistics sheet, not as a guest, not even as family, just back of house. The place card had my name, next to the staff schedule. No +1, no table assignment. I laughed, not out loud, just enough to remember who I was. I almost threw it away. But then something strange happened. I got a message from Ethan. Not personal, just a brief, polite request. He needed help reviewing something before the wedding, some legal language, something to make sure he was covered. He didn't realize the template he'd attached had my name embedded in the footer. Didn't check, didn't think, just assumed. The file opened slowly, line after line of promises. Split assets, joint accounts, restrictions. I knew the format because I built it years ago, and suddenly I saw the loophole, the one no one had closed, the one Lydia would never read, the one Ethan would never notice. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes, then I opened a fresh document. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was aware of what they thought I would be, of what they forgot I was. There was a line buried near the end, subtle, precise, nothing most people would catch. In the event of infidelity, all premarital assets shall remain with the originating party, including gifts, property, and shared investments. I remembered drafting that language. Back when Ethan and I were still together, he'd asked for it, half serious, while we were arguing over something small. You're too good at this. One day I might need you to write the thing that protects me. I did. He kept it. And now he'd sent it back to me, unedited. I didn't change much. Just a name, a date, a small clarification that would be easy to miss. The originating party, as defined in Schedule A, shall include the undersigned's ex-partner, Claire Wells, who contributed materially to the foundation of the undersigned's premarital financial portfolio. That was the line, the one that mattered, the one that tied me quietly into the thing they were about to celebrate. I didn't forge it, didn't tamper, didn't deceive. I just rewrote the draft and sent it back, polished, professional, all formatted correctly, all matching his tone. I waited. 2 days passed. Then Ethan replied, "Looks good, thanks." That was it. That was the moment he signed. And Lydia, she never even saw it. The ceremony was 3 days away. I wasn't on the guest list. I wasn't in the family photos. I wasn't mentioned in the speeches. But I had something better than a seat. I had the blueprint. I booked a hotel 2 blocks from the venue, arrived the night before, didn't tell anyone. The dress I packed was simple, Dark, clean, not festive. I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to finish something. The day of the wedding, I arrived after the music started. The staff didn't question me. I looked like I belonged. They assumed I was one of them. Funny, isn't it, how quickly people look past you when you don't ask to be seen? I waited in the back while Lydia walked down the aisle. Everyone stood, they turned, they beamed, even my parents, especially my mother. She had that look again, the one she saves for Lydia, the one that used to sting when I was younger. It didn't sting now, it just looked small. They made it through the vows, almost, until the officiant asked if there were any final documents to acknowledge before the ceremony was completed. That's when I stepped forward. No rush, no raised voice, just one quiet hand holding one quiet envelope. Lydia's face froze. She tried to smile. Failed. Ethan looked confused, then nervous. I handed him the envelope, looked him in the eye. You forgot to give her the copy. Then I handed her one too. You should read Clause 34. She blinked, opened it. The room shifted. Silence. Then murmurs. Then my mother's voice too loud. Claire, what is this? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Lydia's hands were shaking. She whispered something to Ethan. He turned pale. I walked out before the collapse. Didn't wait to see who yelled first. Didn't stay to explain. I had written the terms. They had agreed to them. Everything else was just math. I left through the back entrance, same one the kitchen staff used. No one followed me. No one called my name, not even my mother. I walked straight to the street, turned the corner, and didn't look back. Not because I was proud, not because I won, but because the part of me that once wanted their attention no longer needed it. By the time I reached the hotel, my phone had 12 missed calls. 4 from Lydia, 5 from my mother, 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't listen to the voicemails, didn't read the texts, just sat on the edge of the bed and waited for the room to stop spinning. You'd think it would feel like revenge, but it didn't. It felt like air after years underground, like being able to stand up straight in a room where no one was watching. I ordered dinner, ate in silence, and finally, slept. For the first time in months, I didn't dream about being forgotten. The next morning, I checked the news, local site, social media photos. The wedding never happened. People were asking questions, but the family wasn't giving answers. The official post just said, due to unforeseen circumstances, the ceremony has been postponed. That was Lydia's word, postponed. She's always preferred soft words for hard things. I got a text from Ethan that afternoon. One line, "Why would you do this?" I didn't reply. He already knew the answer. He just didn't expect the follow-through. Later that week, Melanie, my friend from law school, called me. She'd been at the wedding. Not as a guest. She was working the venue's contracts. She saw the whole thing. She said Lydia collapsed in the hallway after I left, tore the veil, screamed at Ethan, called him a liar, called me worse. Apparently, my mother tried to smooth it over, but my father walked out. Melanie said he didn't even wait for dessert. And the prenup? Signed. Filed. Enforceable. Lydia had signed it weeks ago without reading the rest. All she saw was the ring. All Ethan saw was the money. Neither of them saw the fine print. That's the thing about paperwork. It's cold, unforgiving, and patient. The clause they overlooked meant Lydia would walk away with nothing if there was any history of cheating before the marriage date. Which there was, because Ethan never stopped reaching out to me. Not fully. There were emails, late-night apologies, texts he never thought she'd see. I had them all. Backed up, time-stamped. I never answered, but I kept them. just in case someone ever needed proof that loyalty wasn't in his vocabulary. Lydia didn't cry when she found out. At least, not in public. She sent me a message the next day. "I can't believe you do this to your own sister." That part made me laugh, because all I ever did was stay silent. All I ever did was leave. They were the ones who brought me back, put my name back in the ledger, asked me to serve at a wedding where I wasn't even welcome to sit. I didn't ruin the wedding. I just made sure it reflected the truth. Weddings leave behind glitter and garbage. This one left silence. No photos, no thank you cards, no family follow-up, just a message from my father 3 days later. "Your mother's upset. Lydia hasn't left her room." That was it. Not a question, not a demand, just a quiet handoff of guilt, like always. I didn't reply. Lydia went dark on social media. The pictures came down, the countdown posts disappeared. Even the venue's tagged gallery had been pulled. All that was left was a single comment from someone I didn't recognize. "Does anyone know what happened at the Hastings wedding?" No one answered. A week later, I flew back home. Not for family, for work. I had a meeting near my old neighborhood, so I drove past the house I grew up in. Lights on, curtains drawn. No sign of a wedding ever being planned there. Just a porch I used to sit on, listening to other people get praised for things I'd done first. I didn't stop, just kept driving. There's something oddly peaceful about not being missed, something clean about knowing you're no longer a part of the theater, but peace doesn't last in families like mine. By week 2, the messages started again. Lydia first, then my mother, each one softer than the last. "You didn't have to humiliate us. You could have just said no. Why didn't you talk to us first?" As if I hadn't. As if I hadn't said 1,000 quiet no's that no one ever heard. They didn't want a conversation. They wanted control. A version of events that made me the storm, so they wouldn't have to admit they lit the match. I ignored them. And that silence, it spread. To my aunts. To the cousins. To people who used to forward group texts without thinking. No one quite knew what happened, and no one dared ask. That's the advantage of mystery. It lets people imagine the worst without confirmation. I let them. But Ethan? He didn't stay quiet. He emailed me 3 weeks after the wedding, said he'd lost money, said he might lose more. Apparently, a few investors had second thoughts after finding out he was nearly sued over the prenup. Not by Lydia, by her parents. They tried to claim I'd manipulated the contract, that I'd inserted something malicious. His lawyer disagreed. The documents were clean. They'd signed willingly, no deception, just oversight. That's what stung them the most. That I didn't lie. I just stopped shrinking. My mother called me after that. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. "We were just trying to keep the peace, Claire." Funny how people only want peace once they're not holding the sword. Lydia wasn't blind. She was practiced. She knew how to smile while stepping on someone's neck, knew how to ask for favors that sounded like compliments, knew how to dress cruelty in a tone sweet enough to confuse strangers. She wasn't careless. She was calculated. After the wedding fell apart, she sent a final message. No apology, no confusion. Just this: "You've always hated me." She was wrong, but I didn't correct her, because hate would have meant I still wanted something from her. Attention, approval, love maybe. I didn't want any of it anymore. What I wanted was clarity, and I finally had it. The thing is, Lydia always copied me. My music, my books, even Ethan. She used to ask what I was reading, then post the same quote on her social pages like it came from her. She called it sister synergy, said it was cute. I thought it was annoying. Now I know what it really was: possession. Ethan wasn't her first theft, just the one that stuck. They started dating 2 months after we broke up, but it didn't feel like 2 months. It felt like 2 minutes, like something had already started while I was still watching it end. At the time, I said nothing. I thought maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe I was imagining things, but Lydia always did that. Made you doubt your gut until she could use it for herself. My mother played along. It's just young love, Claire. Don't punish them for timing. As if timing could explain betrayal. They expected me to fold, to stay quiet, to take it the way I took everything else, like furniture, like background. And I almost did. Until the wedding. Until the kitchen. Until the final reminder that I wasn't just unwelcome. I was useful. Only useful. That's when I remembered the contract. The old one. The one Ethan and I built together back when I still thought love needed signatures. I thought I'd deleted it. But I hadn't. And neither had he. That was their mistake. They recycled something they didn't understand, and they handed it back to the woman they thought was gone. So no, I didn't hate Lydia. I didn't need to. I just needed her to feel what it's like to lose something quietly, without warning, without ceremony, the way I did. I never responded to her message, and she never sent another. A week later, I got a letter, handwritten, from my grandmother. It read, "I heard what happened. I don't need the details, but I want you to know, I saw the way they treated you at Easter, and I said nothing. I'm sorry for that. I won't make that mistake again." It was the first apology I'd ever gotten from anyone in my family. And it wasn't even about the wedding. It was about everything else. All the small humiliations, all the quiet exclusions, the slow freeze that started in childhood and never really melted. I kept the letter, not for comfort, but as proof that someone saw me. Once, 2 weeks after the wedding collapsed, my mother sent an invitation, handwritten, folded in half like it might apologize for itself. Inside, "We'd love to have you for dinner, just the family. Let's talk." She added a note at the bottom. "No pressure, just want to clear the air." Which, in my family, usually meant, "We've rewritten the story. Now show up and play your part." I said yes, not because I wanted to eat with them, but because I wanted to watch them try. Try to pretend they didn't know what they did, try to drape civility over damage, try to measure my forgiveness by how quietly I chewed my food. I didn't need revenge, just clarity, just distance made visible. The table was set for 6. White plates, red wine, a roast in the oven that smelled like guilt. Lydia didn't come downstairs. My father greeted me with a cautious smile. My mother hugged me like it was choreographed, like she'd rehearsed what warmth should feel like. They didn't mention the wedding, didn't mention the contract, didn't say Ethan's name. They asked how work was going, if I was seeing anyone, if I remembered the old neighbor who used to bring us peaches. They called it catching up. I called it erasure. Midway through the meal, my mother said this, "It's been hard these last few weeks. I know it hasn't been easy for you either." She looked down when she said it, didn't meet my eyes. Then she added, "I just hope, in time, we can move on. You know, as a family." I set my fork down, let the silence settle, then said what none of them expected. "Do you know what the worst part was?" They waited. It wasn't the contract. It wasn't being seated with the staff. It wasn't even Lydia marrying someone I used to love. My voice didn't rise. It just narrowed. It was knowing that if I had shown up with a gift and a smile, you would have let me serve drinks at my sister's wedding to the man who left me without explanation, and none of you would have seen anything wrong with that. No one spoke. My father glanced at my mother. She reached for her wine. I kept going. You didn't think I mattered enough to ask how I felt. You just assumed I'd show up, stay quiet, and disappear again. But I didn't. And now you're not asking what you did, you're asking when I'll forget it. My mother's voice broke first. Claire, we didn't mean— Yes, I said. You did. You just didn't think I'd notice. I stood up, pushed the chair in quietly. Thank you for dinner. And I walked out. No slam, no scene. Just the sound of my heels on tile and a door that closed like a sentence. They didn't follow. They never do. 2 weeks after the wedding collapsed, my mother sent an invitation. Handwritten, folded in half like it might apologize for itself. Inside, we'd love to have you for dinner. Just the family. Let's talk. She added a note at the bottom. No pressure. Just want to clear the air. Which, in my family, usually meant, we've rewritten the story. Now show up and play your part. I said yes, not because I wanted to eat with them, but because I wanted to watch them try. Try to pretend they didn't know what they did. Try to drape civility over damage. Try to measure my forgiveness by how quietly I chewed my food. I didn't need revenge. Just clarity, just distance made visible. The table was set for 6. White plates, red wine, a roast in the oven that smelled like guilt. Lydia didn't come downstairs. My father greeted me with a cautious smile. My mother hugged me like it was choreographed, like she'd rehearsed what warmth should feel like. They didn't mention the wedding, didn't mention the contract, didn't say Ethan's name. They asked how work was going, if I was seeing anyone, if I remembered the old neighbor who used to bring us peaches. They called it catching up. I called it erasure. Midway through the meal, my mother said this. It's been hard these last few weeks. I know it hasn't been easy for you either. She looked down when she said it, didn't meet my eyes. Then she added, I just hope in time we can move on. You know, as a family. I set my fork down, let the silence settle, then said what none of them expected. Do you know what the worst part was? They waited. It wasn't the contract. It wasn't being seated with the staff. It wasn't even Lydia marrying someone I used to love. My voice didn't rise. It just narrowed. It was knowing that if I had shown up with a gift and a smile, you would have let me serve drinks at my sister's wedding to the man who left me without explanation, and none of you would have seen anything wrong with that. No one spoke. My father glanced at my mother. She reached for her wine. I kept going. You didn't think I mattered enough to ask how I felt. You just assumed I'd show up, stay quiet, and disappear again. But I didn't. And now you're not asking what you did. You're asking when I'll forget it. My mother's voice broke first. Claire, we didn't mean— Yes, I said. You did. You just didn't think I'd notice. I stood up, pushed the chair in quietly. Thank you for dinner. And I walked out. No slam, no scene. Just the sound of my heels on tile and a door that closed like a sentence. They didn't follow. They never do. 2 months passed. No calls, no texts, just the quiet, cautious distance of people trying to make guilt look like grace. Then, on my birthday, a package arrived. No return address, no note inside, just a small white box with gold trim, wrapped carefully. Too carefully. Inside, a photo album, half finished. The first page, a childhood picture of Lydia and me in matching dresses. The caption in my mother's handwriting, 2 peas. Page 2, a family picnic. One I don't remember smiling at. Page 3, Lydia's bridal shower. I wasn't in the picture, but I recognized the dress she wore. Mine. Page 4 was blank, just an empty sleeve, waiting. At the bottom of the box was a card. Still family, still sisters. You'll always have a seat at our table. I stared at that sentence for a long time. It wasn't an apology. It was a rebranding. They weren't sorry for what happened. They were sorry I didn't play along. I put the card back in the box. Didn't throw it out, didn't burn it, just slid it onto a shelf where I keep things that don't deserve to be opened twice. A week later, I found out Lydia had rescheduled the wedding. New venue, smaller guest list. No mention of Ethan's name in the announcement, just a date, a new start. I wasn't invited, but I knew someone who was. Melanie sent me the picture. It was from the bachelorette dinner. Everyone looked airbrushed, even Lydia, especially Lydia. The caption read, "Grateful for second chances." I read it twice, then closed my phone. They weren't building a new life. They were papering over the old one. They wanted memory to be negotiable, but I wasn't. I received the wedding invitation 2 days before the ceremony, late, on purpose. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, inside, formal script, a polite line at the bottom, "Kindly RSVP, kitchen help not required this time." That was Lydia's version of a joke, her way of pretending it was all water under the bridge, but I remembered the bridge. And I remembered who lit the match. I didn't reply, didn't attend, didn't acknowledge it at all, because some silences say more than 1,000 rehearsed toasts ever could. While Lydia tried on her second dress, I walked into a quiet office on the 5th floor of a building no one in my family had ever stepped foot in. Receptionist asked if I had an appointment. I did. She offered water. I declined. The walls were soft beige. Everything smelled like new paper and resolve. He came out with a calm smile. Still wore the same glasses. Still wrote in pen. "Claire Hastings," he said. "Didn't think I'd see you again?" "Me neither," I said. We sat down. He opened the file drawer. Still had the prenup. Still had the original contract. Still had the old notes in my handwriting. He'd never deleted anything. I always liked that about him. "Lydia's getting married again," I said. He nodded. "Same guy?" I shook my head. "Worse." He waited. "I want a copy of the revision," I said. "The addendum we never used, the one with the protection clause." He leaned back. "You're sure?" I was. He didn't ask why, didn't need to. Some people pretend they're confused by family betrayal. He was not one of them. It was a clause we wrote for a case that never made it to court. A fail-safe, a way to reclaim assets if a party entered a marriage under false pretense, like using another's intellectual property or misrepresenting emotional history. We called it the veil clause. Fitting. He handed me the copy. Clean, simple, cold. I read it once, didn't flinch, then asked for one more thing. He gave me the envelope, and I left. That afternoon, I stopped by the venue. Not inside, just long enough to watch the trucks unload the flowers. Same vendor, same arrangements I'd chosen for my wedding years ago. Lydia had copied everything again, even the peonies. They weren't in season. She must have paid extra. I dropped the envelope off at the front desk of her apartment building. No return address, no message, just a copy of the veil clause and a post-it that read, "Some things don't disappear just because you close the book." The next morning she called, 5 times. I didn't pick up. The 6th time, I let it ring. Let her hear the line go dead. Melanie told me later she showed up to the rehearsal in tears. Didn't explain. Didn't cancel, just went through the motions like someone acting out the last chapter of a story they didn't write. But the thing about pretending, it works until the wrong person remembers too much, and I remembered everything. Lydia still walked down the aisle, hair curled, veil ironed, smile painted on, every part of her flawless, every part of it fake. I wasn't there, but I didn't have to be. I knew the venue, I knew the planner, and I knew at least 3 people who couldn't keep a secret if their lives depended on it. They sent pictures, clips, even the program. I watched it unfold in real time, from a small cafe across town, black coffee, no sugar, it felt clean. The ceremony was on a dock, lake in the background, white chairs lined up like confessions. The groom looked nervous, not because he had doubts, but because he didn't have answers. He'd read the clause. She showed it to him the night before, told him it meant nothing, told him it was a joke from her bitter sister. But he wasn't stupid. He'd Googled the lawyer's name. He knew it was real. He stood there holding her hand, smiling for the guests. But you could see it. The slight hesitation before "I do." The glance that lingered too long on her purse like he was waiting for something else to fall out. It didn't. Not that day. Lydia didn't collapse, didn't scream, didn't confess. She finished what she started. But the photos never went up. The reception was short. The cake was barely touched. Half the guests left before dessert. And Melanie told me later, when they did the first dance, Lydia didn't look at her husband once. She looked at the entrance, like she thought I might walk in. I didn't. I never planned to. But the gift I left at her apartment? She kept it, didn't return it, didn't destroy it. Just put it in a drawer, top right, beside her hair ties and expired coupons. She'd open it sometimes, then close it again. Melanie said she asked about me once, just once. Does Claire hate me? Melanie said she didn't answer, didn't have to. The veil clause was never filed. It didn't need to be. I'd made my point, and Lydia would never know if the groom kept a copy, or if I'd sent one to his family, or if I'd spoken to his lawyer. That's the thing about fear. It fills in the blanks better than I ever could. She had her wedding, her dress, her ring. But she'd never have peace, because she'd never know how many strings I still held in my hand. 3 months after the second wedding, I got another invitation. Cream envelope, gold lettering, not from Lydia, not from my mother, from my father. Handwritten, formal, deliberate. We're updating the estate plan. Your mother and I would like you present when we finalize it. Just you, no one else. There was no mention of Lydia, no mention of her husband, no excuses, just a date. And my name, written the right way this time, no nicknames, no condescension. Claire Hastings, full stop. I went. Not because I needed the money, not even for closure. I went because silence has a price, and I'd paid it long enough. The lawyer's office was small, windowless, the kind of place meant for decisions, not discussion. My parents were already there when I arrived. My father looked tired, but steady. My mother didn't look at me at all, just sat with her hands folded in her lap, like a schoolgirl waiting for discipline. They didn't ask how I was, didn't ask about my job, didn't bring up the wedding, just nodded when I sat down. The lawyer explained the terms. Clear, simple, final. My name was listed first, primary beneficiary, the house, the accounts, the land, all of it. My sister's name was there too, next to a number, $1,000. Symbolic, cruel, maybe, but also calculated. A number small enough to hold no power in court, a number meant to say, "We remembered you, but we didn't forget what you did." When the lawyer left to draw up the signatures, my father finally spoke. "You don't have to forgive us." I didn't respond. "But I need you to know, when you walked out of that wedding, you weren't walking away from us." I met his eyes. I was. He nodded. No argument, no protest. Just acceptance. Then he looked at my mother. She was still staring at her lap. "She was right," he said. "You knew. You just didn't want to lose the narrative." She didn't answer, didn't cry, didn't object, just pressed her lips together and breathed through her nose, like someone holding in a lifetime of decisions they now regretted too late. I signed the papers, took my copy, thanked the lawyer, then walked out of the room without a hug or a backward glance. The estate would be mine someday. But the inheritance had already happened, not in money, not in property. But in the moment, I realized I no longer needed to be loved by people who only saw me as a placeholder. They seated me in the kitchen. I didn't fight. I waited. I watched. And when the time came, I reminded them what happens when the person you count out turns out to be the only one holding the contract.